I think I just have two slides here, and I think the topic here is communication of information. I thought I'd just go ahead and spend a couple of slides talking about that. To give you a little bit more information about, for example, public education sites. We have talked about the need for a PML registry. The consortium is producing its registry in an excellent way and has its goals. We're doing this through the Institute, through NINDS, with our steering committee as well. I think as we begin to look at this and flesh that out, then I think we can answer many of the questions that have been brought up during this particular conference. I would just like to say that if you're looking for information, regardless of what category of individual you are, the NINDS, as well as all the other NIH institutes, has a public communications office. And it has a list of diseases that, for example, NINDS studies and funds. That list is quite extensive, and I think on the website there probably are hundreds of neurologic diseases where there is information that the public goes to. The NIH Center for Information Technology, CIT, tells us that there's something like 32 million hits on the NIH website every day. We have no idea how many of those comes to NINDS, but I'm sure there's somebody who knows that piece of information. So the public goes to those sites very frequently, either for basic science information or for clinical studies that are being done. It's quite extensive. My colleague here, Maria Barhams, has just helped the Institute update the PML website, and I think there's an opportunity there to go ahead and have direct links with other sites, for example. So if someone needs to have information about PML, there could be links with the other institutes and other underlying diseases. There could be links to other kinds of websites as well, so that information becomes more available and more accessible. Each of the institutes, as I said, do have these kinds of sites, so there's as these kinds of communication technologies become a little bit more easy to use, there are ways to be able to go ahead and include that information. And that, from the NIH, we will particularly listen to our sister institute, the FDA, as what it is that's going to be useful and helpful to be able to put on that site. Let me just say also that, and we've said this before, that the NIH also is very responsive to patient advocacy groups that helps to inform the institutes and set its priorities. So I think in this particular environment here, I think we're looking at PML not only as an isolated rare and perhaps orphan disease, but we're looking at it also in consort with other kinds of diseases as well. And I think as that begins to sink in a little bit more, I think, again, there'll be more of a breadth of opportunity for funding. How do we do that also besides just with websites and that? I think one of the things that really is critical is to bring to the attention of professional societies the importance of looking at this disease. Even though its incidence may be low, even though we're not quite sure of the incidence of this disease, we would certainly think that national organizations in the US, the American Academy of Neurology, as well as the American Neurologic Association, it would be good for those of us who work in this particular field to not only attend those meetings, but present their findings. I think there's a wonderful opportunity here, for example, to have the summary of this particular workshop in some format or other presented to the ANA, which is coming up in September. There should be a format to be able to do that. Get the communication going, get that out. The other thing that I had, and I will say naively thought, is that why don't we make JC infection of the brain that leads to PML a reportable disease? Our other sister agency is the Center for Disease Control. So we brought that topic to them. And I would say that we were not particularly successful in making the case. And I'll take responsibility for that. I don't know what I said to upset them because I thought it was a pretty good idea. But we're not there yet for that. And one of the reasons is that the CDC, and they're the surveillance part of the agencies within HHS. The FDA is the regulatory side, and the NIH is the research side. So the CDC does surveillance, and they do that particularly in mind that it has to be a substantial public health issue. Because PML is a rare disease, because again, we don't have a lot of tools to be able to look at some of the biological parameters and transmissions of this disease. It doesn't come up to the standards that they would say it would be important to make PML a reportable disease. And actually, in the framework by which the CDC works, it doesn't really fit. However, we've not given up on this, and so we will revisit this in another year or so and see whether or not we can conform more to their surveillance criteria and as we get more understanding for this. We have to make sure we understand exactly how this disease is rare, although I think that actually it's not nearly as rare as what we think, and at a point in which we can convince some of our colleagues that, in fact, this has substantial public health issues. So those are the points that I wanted to make. Thanks.